Serengeti at dawn. The solitary beauty of the Andes. The Amazonian rainforest, plucking its lifeblood from the very clouds. The haunting splendor of the Himalayas, the Barrier Reef, the Swiss Tyrol, the Kalahari, the Nile Delta, Colorado, Mozambique, Finland in August. It doesn't really matter where we are, does it? Basically, we're at home, feet up, watching one of those nice nature programs on the telly. I'm a sucker for wildlife programs, aren't you? All the really interesting bits of natural history. None of the boring hours spent hiding behind a tree waiting for something interesting to pop out of a hole. Look. There it is, straight away.
Armadillo hole.
Now add a bit of interesting, drummy, rhythmic music. A nice man with a posh voice.
Disemboweling is a brutal business, but our report...
And I can sit glued to the telly for hours as the greatest exciting mystery in the universe unfolds. Birth. Young animals growing up. Display in all its million varieties. Sex, perfectly acceptable on wildlife programs even before the 9 o'clock watershed. The tragedy of death, the destruction of the corpse, and birth again. The scavenging of a corpse becomes the whole basis of a new cycle of life and death. It's great stuff, isn't it? But isn't there one thing missing? This is a cow. And in exactly the same way as our hyena is basically recycled wildebeest, so this cow is basically recycled grass. What happens is the grass goes in through that entrance there, and it all gets mushed up, and then it goes down this chute here into this fermentation tank, and it shoots back up, a bit more chewing and mushing, and then all the way back down for some more fermentation, and then the chemical goodies get distributed all over the cow, so the cow grows bigger, or else they go all the way down here and turn into milk, which is pulled off twice a day, so you can all get your daily pinter. A pretty staggering process, I think you'll agree, except that this recycling process isn't 100% efficient. There's stuff that the cow misses, stuff that comes out here that we don't talk about much at the dinner table, and you don't see all that much of in natural history programs. And yet it's as inescapably part of the natural world as the butterfly's wing or the peacock's tail. And it's something which we ignore into our peril. So what do? We ignore it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the wonderful world of Dung. On average, each of us produces this much waste every day, 1.8 litres. And what do we do with it? Do we harness its energies? Do we recycle it for something useful? Do we, heck? The liquids may be recycled, but the solids are flushed down the toilet, through the sewer pipes, into the sewage farms, and then out into the sea. Sewage farms aren't called sewage farms anymore. They're water recovery plants, which is a nice way of saying that the water in your scotch has probably passed through a whole pub full of people before it gets to you. And we should be reusing our solids too. Instead, we poison them with toxic industrial waste, set fire to them in huge furnaces, shunt them into big holes in the ground, dump them in the North Sea. Less than half of our waste is recycled. The rest we smear over the planet like a bunch of disturbed children who haven't been toilet trained. But this sort of thing's better not talked about, really, is it? It's mucky, nasty, at best a rather dirty joke. Well, that's as maybe, but we're going to have to start taking some notice of it soon, because there's so much of the stuff about, it's getting to be a very serious problem. So how come there's no EC Dung Mountain? Because farmers have always realised what a valuable commodity it is. Every year, they put the muck back in the soil, and regular as clockwork, nature comes up with the required magic. A very special trick that's most noticeable each and every spring. Gradually, the land gets warmed up by the sun, and seeds inside the soil start to grow, throwing up a host of green leaves into the light. These leaves are like solar panels, specifically designed to intercept the sun's rays, using the energy they capture to make more leaves and more plant. This trapping of the sun's energy is the magic of photosynthesis. So when our cow eats its grass, it's actually taking energy on board. Energy which it can either use to make itself grow, or else it can give to its young in the form of milk. So milk itself is jam-packed with energy that's been gleaned from the countryside. That pint contains enough power to blow your arm off. And as for butter, why does butter make us put on weight? Well, that pack alone contains enough potential power to fuel a hand grenade. And we as potential consumers can either burn off that energy by continued exercise, or, if you're like me, you can store it in flabby rings round your stomach. And what about this cow? Imagine the damage that she could cause. A single Jersey could flatten a three-storey building. A great big herd of heifers could destroy a city the size of Bath. But, of course, we don't live in a world that's full of exploding milk and exploding butter, or even, thank goodness, exploding cows. Why not? Because animals control the amount of energy they release and use. And in doing so, they fail to harness it all. And this means that the residue that they leave behind isn't just a useless waste. It's brimful of energy itself. Cow dung is literally hot property, which attracts immediate attention. 12 times a day, a cow produces a nice, soft, bouncy landing pad for dung flies. Within seconds of its appearance, males have arrived and jumped on a female, whose fertilized eggs have got to be laid before the pat forms an impenetrable hard crust. Other flies and other insects will visit the cowpat to find a mate, lay eggs in it, and get tanked up on its juices. They begin the succession of changes that transforms every cowpat. The cowpat may be irresistible to colonizing dung flies, but the cows don't like it and avoid grazing round it. You can't blame them. It's already host to newly born dung fly larvae, as well as the developing spores of fungi which have survived the trip through the cow's intestines. With time speeded up, you can see how fungi exploit the energy available to them in this teeming city of a cowpat. But as cows don't eat their own muck, how did the spores of these fungi get into the cow in the first place? Well, this one has its own incredible little device. The black spores at its tip are sat on top of a miniature water cannon that fires the spores beyond the ring of grass that has grown up around the cow pat and that the cow won't graze. That bombard the pasture are very sticky and will only be dislodged when the cow eats and digests the palatable grass.
The wonderful world of Dung will continue. Every day we exist not knowing, not caring, but we are part of nature's cycle, linked forever to Life Force. Tuesday at 10 Eastern and Pacific, only on the Discovery Channel.
Introducing the exciting new Subaru Impreza Sport Wagon. All 110 cubic feet of it. That's like the size of 4 sleeping bags, luggage, a 20-pound sack of potatoes, 3 bags of groceries, a portable barbecue, and a family of 4. Hey, everybody needs their own space. The new roomy Impreza Sport Wagon from Subaru. It's not just another new car.
Recently, an object was sighted.
It was big. It was just big.
Too big to measure with the human eye.
They say it could show up anywhere.
Whoa! Did you see that? Pizza Hut!
Bigfoot from Pizza Hut.
Out of sight, big.
21 slices.
I can handle it.
On a totally different crust.
Whoa!
For a ridiculously low $10.99. It's a legendary value. Bigfoot from Pizza Hut. The biggest pizza you can get delivered.
We're gonna tempt your tummy with a taste of nuts and honey.
Honey Nut Cheerios, whole grain oats and crunchy almonds, honey toasted for that irresistible taste.
It's Honey Nut Cheerios.
Do you know?
Yeah. That what most people don't know about AIDS could fill a video? Time Out. The truth about HIV, AIDS, and you. It's filled with facts and fun. Rent one free at participating video stores.
Challenge. Wings of the Luftwaffe. The Adventurers. It all begins at 8 Eastern and Pacific next Saturday night, only on the Discovery Channel.
Do you know what you need to know about managing your money? Take the Wall Street Journal Personal Finance Test and find out. Are you wasting money by buying a car rather than leasing it? Are there drawbacks to refinancing a loan at a lower rate? When can you throw away old tax returns? You'll find the answers in this free book, The Wall Street Journal Guide to Understanding Personal Finance. The guide is filled with information, from financing your new car to refinancing your home. There's even information on how to lower your taxes. It's yours free when you subscribe to the Wall Street Journal. Every business day, the Wall Street Journal gives you the news, analysis, and insights you need to make the right decisions for your business, your career, your future. Subscribe now to the Wall Street Journal. Get 13 weeks of the Journal for $37, over 20% off the newsstand price, and your free copy of the Guide to Personal Finance. Call 800-523-9800. That's 800-523-9800.
The wonderful world of Dung now continues.
For every gallon of milk it produces, a British cow leaves behind 3 gallons of muck at the rate of 12 cowpats a day, over 4,000 a year. Every year, there's enough to bury the Houses of Parliament in a dung pile over 2,000 feet deep. But perhaps arguably, it does have better uses. If muck piles up, the heat produced increases. While this heat destroys harmful organisms, the muck heap also becomes a perfect incubator for new life, like this fungus. Or is it? Take a closer look. For the grass snakes, the undisturbed muck heap provides an ideal hatchery. But of course, fungus does flourish on dung. Horse muck traditionally becomes mushrooms. And mushrooms? Well, mushrooms can very quickly become people. Is it an uncomfortable thought that what comes out of a horse's bottom ends up in your throat? Well, maybe, but that's what recycling's all about. The waste of one becoming the natural food of another. Even though animals aren't 100% efficient at extracting the energy from their food, it doesn't mean they don't try. Cows and other ruminants eat everything twice. They chew it, then regurgitate the cud, sending it up from their stomach back into the mouth for more chewing. Wait for it. Down goes one cud, and up comes another. But other animals too go to extraordinary lengths to make the most of their food. Rabbits, like cows, eat their food twice. After their food has gone through them once, they eat their own droppings and repeat the whole process. So the pellets in the latrines outside their burrows are at the end of their second digestive journey through the rabbit. I don't remember that bit in Watership Down, do you? Eating their own dung is not only normal, it's essential for rabbits. But even when they've extracted all they need from their droppings, yes, you've guessed it, there's still someone else who wants a nibble. The Minotaur beetle trundles them away into tunnels beneath the latrine, where it'll feed on them and lay its eggs. And the ones the beetle leaves behind? Yes, it's not long before their own inner fungal life starts to erupt. Dung the world over contains the seeds and spores of its own destruction. Not mushrooms, but toadstools on an elephant dropping in East Africa. Elephants have incredibly prodigious appetites. Each day, over 200 weight of vegetation and 50 gallons of water in one end means almost as much out the other end. And that's the end of the matter as far as the elephant's concerned. Well, usually. But when there's a drought, there's no alternative to going back for a second helping. Calf needs to drink the equivalent of a crate of milk a day, so when it's thirsty, the water in the dung is especially valuable. But if you're thinking to yourselves, ooh, how disgusting, fancy eating your own poo, remember how energy efficient it is, and compare that with the human race. All the lights we leave on, all the petrol we burn, all the precious materials which we just chuck in the skip. And in exactly the same way that the rag and bone man sorts through our waste for tasty little items, exactly the same thing happens to the goose. Geese digest their food quickly but poorly, so they eat a lot to compensate and produce a lot of droppings as a result. In cold weather, this can be good news for another vegetarian, the coot. It seems that after all, there is such a thing as a free lunch. The saddle-billed stork gets its freebie too. A beak full of elephant dung, which provides additional nesting material, as well as a few tasty snacks for its youngsters. The ocean is a rich soup of waste products, tiny particles provided by some organism or other, and almost all of them gobbled up again for their food value. Even the giant clam makes its contribution to the feast. It's just a matter of waiting for the big event. And despite their stoniness, corals have food value too. The parrotfish grazes them, snipping off chunks with its bony beak and grinding them up to digest what it can. Then what's left becomes sand. Look at all these happy trippers. I bet their travel agent never told them their beach had been made out of old parrotfish poop. It's very useful for aquatic animals to be surrounded by running water. The hippopotamus is completely at home in it, safe from predators and surrounded by food. They're totally vegetarian, and as you can imagine, have voracious appetites. And what goes in must come out. Lots of it, with the water making sure it's dispersed quickly and easily about the floor of their lake. The massive amounts of underwater dung are the perfect gift to a lot of underwater life. Most noticeably to the fish who are always hanging about. But dung isn't only food. Dung is news. Muck spreading a little individual perfume will ensure that other hippos know who else is in the pool today. So whether dung is produced by a giant clam, a parrotfish or a hippo, it's far from being a complete waste. I mean, ask a black buck. It doesn't all smell the same, does it? Male black buck proclaim their territories by sitting on their own dung piles. Each pile looks different, each pile smells different. So every buck's territory has its own individual signature. The buck may reinforce this smelly information by marking its dung pile with scent from glands on its face. Occasionally, a buck will leave his territory to drink or graze, and this can bring him into conflict with other males nearby, though disputes usually go no further than pacing up and down their common boundary. So without fighting, their social organisation is maintained by the sight and scent of dung. And if that's not useful, what is? But it's not only in the exotic middens of India that smells tell other members of the species that they're not alone. British badgers have their own pungent lingo. They live in family groups in and around their set. As evening draws in, one of them goes off to patrol their territory. Its boundary is outlined by the tracks that they make and regularly follow, and which are punctuated by latrines. These are holes in the ground, which the badger marks, indicating to other badgers that this particular brock is alive and well. Starlings have a hard time coping with the appetite of their chicks. Not only are they kept busy at the sharp end, they're equally occupied at the blunt end, cleaning up the mess. And the same is true for the blue tit. Food in equals feces out. All neatly packaged up in a fecal sack. But the very undesirability of bird droppings has a use. Take the tufted duck, the drake, a very clean-cut looking bird. His wife, equally dapper, concealed on the nest. But something approaches. Now, unprotected, her eggs are open to attack, except, whew, she sprayed her droppings all over them. Strangely, this usually puts the predator off his breakfast. I can't think why. Aphids or greenfly plague many kinds of plants, even nettles. To feed themselves, they push their needle-like stylets into the stem, and the sap is literally pumped into them by the plant, a bit like putting your mouth over a barrel of lager. They extract what they want, but again, just like lager, most of it goes straight through them. Bottoms up. Fancy another? Not all aphids perform this sanitary little flicking trick, and that's what the ants rely on. They protect their little flock of sheep-like aphids and drink the sweet excess of honeydew. Whatever form dung may take, and whatever words we use to describe it, from the delicate honeydew to the good old English shit, it's a wonderful substance with an infinite variety of uses. For instance, if you leave fresh dung for long enough, it becomes the ideal compost, nutrients and water packaged neatly together, perfect for germination or the growth of plants. Smell that. Delicious.
The wonderful world of dung will continue.
This portion of Discovery is brought to you in part by Korbel Champagne.
To celebrate Korbel Champagne.
Some things were meant to fade, and some things weren't. Like Dutch Boy's satin finish house paint. Nothing resists cracking, peeling, and fading better. Nothing. Dutch Boy, for the look that lasts.
Hi, this has to be in LA tomorrow.
No problem, sir.
express mail from the Postal Service. You're never left in the dark.
Yes, your package is in L.A. and being delivered.
Morning.
From just $9.95, we track, we trace, we deliver for you.
Recently, an object was sighted.
It was big. It was just big.
Too big to measure with the human eye.
They say it could show up anywhere.
Whoa! Did you see that? Pizza Hut!
Bigfoot from Pizza Hut.
Out of sight big.
21 slices.
I can handle it.
On a totally different crust.
Whoa!
For a ridiculously low $10.99. It's a legendary value. Bigfoot from Pizza Hut. The biggest pizza you can get delivered.
This is your life. This is your world. This is your chance. You gotta be there now.
Since Sprint is the only global phone company that offers everything, local, long distance, and cellular, it means with Sprint, no matter where you go, there you are.
Every day we exist, not knowing, not caring. Free, or so we think. But like everything on Earth, we are part of the cycle. Each player depending on the other. Each part essential, necessary, for energy, for fuel, for life. See where we fit in. Unlock the secrets of Life Force. Tuesday at 10 Eastern and Pacific, only on the Discovery Channel. Sunday, July 4th. Warbirds, wild birds, and our national symbol. First, take a flying tour of the National Warplane Museum with the wings of eagles. Next, journey to its largest known gathering place and see Alaska's bald eagle. Then get a close-up look at the wild turkey on a Discovery Sunday, 4th of July. Next Sunday, beginning at 9 Eastern and Pacific. The wonderful world of Dung now continues.
What better way to start your life than in a bed of nice, warm, nourishing horse dung, especially if in the process you get away from having to compete with your relations. The pods and seeds of the Guanacaste tree are a tasty addition to the diet of the wild horses of the Costa Rican forest, even though the pods and seed coats are tough. These pods can linger inside the horse's stomach for months on end while the horse tries to digest them. And by the time they're back in the outside world, the ones that survive the digestive juices can find themselves sprouting miles away from the parent tree. Horse-powered tree dispersal. Pretty brilliant, eh? But it's only a fortunate few that make it. Seed-eating pocket mice rummage through the horse droppings and thwart the chances of most of the seeds germinating and so maintaining the forest. The Guanacaste pod may seem like a pretty unattractive meal, but many tropical forest trees have evolved particularly enticing fleshy fruits that are easily seen, smelt, tasted and eaten. The outer flesh is easily broken down, but the digestion-resistant seeds remain, hitchhiking a ride until eventually they fall to the ground, ready wrapped in their own supply of highly organic fertilizer. In such a forest, there's a continual rain of droppings from above. Like this. Well, no, not like this, actually. This isn't a bird dropping. It's a caterpillar disguised as a bird dropping. And this one? Yes, it's another caterpillar. But the real stuff does make it to the forest floor. But it only remains here until the next downpour. As soon as a dropping lands, and before it gets washed away by rainfall, beetles come racing out of nowhere to sniff it out and remove it. Only minutes ago, a bird ate the fruit that surrounded the seeds in this bird dropping. But already, there are ants all over it. Not to bury it, it's the seeds they're after. They dismantle the dropping at high speed, like car breakers stripping a wreck for valuable spares. These tiny ants, they're about 3 millimeters long, carry the seeds to their nest in a nearby rotten twig, where they crack them open for food. But some seeds survive inside the nest, then germinate, and may later become established as trees. So first of all a fruit, then a bird, then a minute ant may be responsible for helping the forest to regenerate and spread. And once again, dung is the primary agent in their dispersal. Ah, the Serengeti. I knew we'd get there in the end. For the East African acacia, animal dung is absolutely essential. The pods get attacked by a weevil, a small beetle that lays its eggs in the developing seeds. Often, virtually every one of the pods is attacked, so that eventually no seeds emerge, just weevils. If vervet monkeys eat them, what few viable seeds there are will be killed along with the weevils. But if they're eaten by an impala, then though the weevils are killed by its digestive process, any viable seeds survive. Not only that, but the seeds come out nicely softened. And once again, the scattered dung aids in the seed's dispersal. But not all animals on the East African plains scatter their dung. White rhinos build vast mounds of the stuff. This is a dominant male. Every day he attends to his mound, raking through the old bits, adding new, spraying it. Just one sniff of the stuff drives him into a frenzy of mound-making activity. Just like dominant males in the city, they're totally obsessed with making their pile. This is mine, is the message they're giving to all the other males. Keep out, or else. These mounds are really vast, 15 meters across, but then every rhino does produce 30 tons of dung each year. And what happens to it all, along with all the other dung that piles up every dry season? From the wildebeest, the zebra, and the countless hordes of wildlife trekking across the plain. Where does it all go? After the rains, here comes the recycling squad. Wherever there's dung beetles compete fiercely for their share. Often, the weight of the beetles in a dung pile is more than the weight of the dung itself. There are over 2,000 species of dung beetle in Africa, and they come in all shapes and sizes. Some as large as your fist, some much smaller. They're completely adapted to the process of digging, and it takes them only a few minutes to manufacture a dung ball the size of an orange or even larger, which is then ready to be rolled along. This species often works in pairs, the female hitching a ride while the male pushes. The faster they dig and roll, the less chance there is of being hijacked by other beetles. If another beetle does muscle in, the owner either defends it with a sort of beetle-y half Nelson, or flips it over like a tiddlywink. But sometimes their efforts are all in vain. Before they can recycle the dung, they get recycled into jackal. In Africa, the great herds of dung producers are more than matched by the clean-up squads of the dung beetle army. But it's been a different story in Australia. When cattle were first introduced, there weren't enough native beetles to remove the cattle dung quick enough. And the swarms of bush flies that bred in it drove not only the cattle, but also the people mad, especially in summer. And as Australia's 30 million cows drop 360 million cow pats a day, 15 million an hour, and 250,000 every minute, their cow pats threaten to wreck the outback and even bury the continent. It was a real cowpat of a problem. But there was a solution. Foreign beetles were sent for. Out of Africa came international rescue.
The wonderful world of dung will continue. Bird Brain of Britain, next on Discovery Sunday.
It sizzles like summer, and it won't last long. Presenting Red Lobster's Summer Seafood Feast. One of our biggest seafood combinations, just $9.99. With scallops hot off the grill, fried clams, a fish fillet. Plus, you get 2 kinds of shrimp, succulent scampi and golden fried shrimp. Wow, 5 kinds of seafood for an incredibly low $9.99. So hurry in and feast tonight, because the Summer Seafood Feast ends July 4th, only at Red Lobster.
There's a place where the water is as clear as a blue summer sky, where you can play, get in shape, or relax and do nothing at all. A place where you can be with your children, or with your spouse, or just by yourself. A place that's refreshing and cool and as close as your backyard, your own pool. It's not just a place, it's a way of life. Make it yours. Call 1-800-323-3996.
If you depend on your truck to last, here's news you should never forget. Of all the Chevy trucks built in the last 10 years, over 98% are still going strong. That's more than Ford, more than Toyota, more than Nissan. Over the years, no other truck is that dependable, foreign or domestic. Only Chevrolet, the most dependable, longest-lasting trucks on the road.
In IndyCar racing, when it rains, we don't race on super speedways. But we're running this IndyCar on Goodyear Eagles to prove a point about wet traction, cornering, and stopping. What's the point? These are not Goodyear Racing Eagles. They're Eagle GSC street radials with dual tread design for outstanding traction in the dry and in the wet. Eagle GSC street radials, only from Goodyear. We like to say the best tires in the world have Goodyear written all over them.
1 year ago, our country fought to save a tiny nation. But we'd just like to remind you that there's another tiny nation worth fighting for. And this fight is far from over.
You can't escape. It's coming. Go ahead. Catch it. We dare you to watch Shark Week 93. Coming in July. Only on the Discovery Channel.
Ask anyone, what's the most important part of a heat pump or air conditioner? They'll probably say the compressor. They're right. So it makes you wonder why only one manufacturer builds its own compressor to ensure rigid and exacting standards for long life. Which one? Train, the Climatough.
Train, better than it has to be.
In Bucks County for over 50 years, Harris Fuels has been famous for fuel oil and the most professional residential or commercial central air service. Call Harris Fuels anytime.
Watch closely as Daredevil Mark conquers the super-duper quadruple loop roller coaster. Racing from the villainous train robbers, Laurie and Tiffany are pushing their steam engine to its limit. Kids, pretending is fun, but the real thing is even better. So ask Mom and Dad for the American Lung Association's Children's Fun Pass. It's full of spectacular discounts on exciting attractions for just a $15 donation. So contact your local American Lung Association or call 1-800-LUNG-USA and get your Children's Fun Pass today.
The wonderful world of Dung now continues.
Some natural accumulations of dung we, of course, take for granted. Take Trafalgar Square and its pigeon droppings. Half a ton can accumulate on Nelson's column if it's not cleaned. It costs over £35,000 a year just to wash the square. But where there are millions of birds like cormorants and plenty of fish to sustain them, the guano that piles up becomes an extremely valuable resource. Guano is 30 times more effective than farmyard manure, and in the dry conditions of coastal Peru, the 20 million local birds can produce a harvest of 1/3 tons every 2 or 3 years. And that's only a fraction of what it was 100 years ago before overexploitation. Then, 60% of Peru's entire income came from the bottoms of these birds. But it's not only birds that produce guano. These Southeast Asian horseshoe bats feed at night on insects outside this cave, whilst by day their droppings accumulate inside, and over hundreds, maybe thousands of years, have piled up into this gigantic 300-foot high dune. stinks of ammonia, and its surface shimmers and seethes with countless golden cockroaches. These, along with other creatures, are busy recycling the bat's waste. This is the guano-eating caterpillar of a moth, its mobile home built from fragments of dead insect. Everything is recycled. There are even scavengers in the liquid that drains out of the bottom of the gigantic pile. Such huge natural accumulations of organic fertilizer are rare now. Man-made products have taken over. A better understanding of recycling and organic methods is spreading, although it's often not used in the places it's most needed. If you've no money and no trees for building material or fuel, you're often forced to use the precious gift of dung to meet more immediate needs. Many Ethiopians have to use it as roofing material, or else mix it with straw and dry it out to make artificial cow pats to be burnt as fuel. So whereas it should be going back into the land, its energy is released quickly and wastefully into the air. But we're civilized in the West, aren't we? We know all about recycling. Really? So what do we do with our waste? Well, there's our dung, isn't there? 30 million tons of sewage sludge a year in this country alone. 50% of it contaminated with industrial waste, buried in landfills, burnt in incinerators, or dumped into the sea. That's really civilized, isn't it? And what about all the other waste we produce? The paper, the plastic, the great indigestible droppings of contemporary society. We can't recycle all that lot, say the economists. It's not economically viable. Well, maybe, just maybe, they're getting their sums wrong. Or will they still be saying it's unviable when we're all choking to death in our own filth? Seagulls and other scavengers do their bit, but it doesn't make any difference. The mounds get bigger and bigger. Another 50% more of the stuff in the next 10 years. The problem is that while the goose has got its coot and the ant's got its green fly, we haven't got any naturally evolved recyclers to help us with our waste problem. All we've got is our own completely unproductive version of the dung beetle, the bulldozer. It's a bit like the Australian cowpat problem, really. No one else is going to get rid of it for us. So unless we do something soon, we're going to be up to our necks in it. Our landfill sites are threatening to engulf us in one big, unattractive, indigestible cowpat of human rubbish. Perhaps this really is the beginning of the end, and we'll be the endangered species. Because unlike the dung beetle, when our planet's full, there won't be another cowpat for us to move off to.
Coming up next, Discovery Sunday continues with Bird Brain of Britain and Flies, the great Australian salute. Then the timber wolf's family life belies the animal's big bad reputation on Wildlife Tales.